Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this episode of our Ask Me Anything webinar series. We're thrilled to have you all here, whether you're joining us from across the street or from halfway around the world. We're in for another thrilling session as we dive into some interesting information from the wireless technology space. Today, we are lucky to have a presenter who is both an expert and a visionary in the field. Phil Morgan has spent over 2 decades helping to shape the future of wireless technology, working with organizations worldwide, helping to implement cutting-edge solutions that drive efficiency and growth. From wireless networking to cybersecurity, Phil has a deep understanding of the technologies that are transforming industries and is here to share some of his valuable insights with us. As we go through the presentation, be ready to take notes and ask plenty of questions during the Q&A segment. You will be muted upon entry, so please type your questions into the chat window. Additionally, we will be recording this session and will be uploading it to our YouTube channel. Once that is done, we'll email all attendees with the link, so be on the lookout for that. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Phil Morgan, who will be taking us through today's discussion. Phil, it's over to you.
Thank you, Ree. I appreciate that. All right, let's start this then. Welcome to our AMA webinar series. As always, we start off with, just because I mentioned something that sounds like a good idea, don't run and implement it now. Make sure you think about it and check what the implications are, please. A couple of introductions about NC Expert and myself. I'm more than happy for you all to watch the video on these if you want more information. You might want to take a note or a screenshot. We will be providing you with the video afterwards, so you can go look there. But let's remind ourselves of why we're here. A lot of people ask questions in the Wireless LAN Pro Slack, and we thought it would be a good idea if we actually took some of those questions and made them into an open forum. And so that's what this is. Today, we're going to talk about security. We're not going to really give an introduction to too much. We're going to sort of jump into the real issues and talk about security. So this is not really an introduction to security. It's an introduction to the issues that may arise with security. It might be better. So we're going to quickly cover over the security concepts, the basics. Then we're going to talk about what's good about WPA3. We're going to talk about Wi-Fi 7. We're going to make some recommendations, some good life tips for using security and Wi-Fi security, especially so. So let's start off with security concepts. I always start with this, that inconvenience is a hacker's best friend. Anything that you do that inconveniences people, they will try and make a shortcut to. And that means they will try and bypass it. So they will bring in their own Wi-Fi router, for want of a word, and they will bypass your Wi-Fi router because what you're providing doesn't work very well. It's the accounts team, and we got to get the accounts done. It's near the end of the month. So just go down the local retail store, buy a Wi-Fi router, plug it into the Ethernet port so we can reach the printer. And now we have shadow IT unauthorized devices operating on our network. And I actually believe that we are not paranoid enough. And this sounds quite mean, but you can't fix stupid, said Mrs. Gump a long, long time ago. But I do believe that you can help it. Okay. And a general rule I want to mention now, more and more today, we are coming to the conclusion that longer passwords are better than very complex uppercase, lowercase, special character passwords. All right. So let's talk about foundations and fundamentals of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a broadcast radio. So if you walk around your building with your iPhone and you can't hear the SSID that's wide open in the middle of the building, you may think that it's secure. Well, distance away should never be a security mechanism. Just because you can't hear the signal outside of an area with your device doesn't mean that I can't hear the signal from a further distance away with my device. By optimizing an antenna and focusing the antenna, I can quite happily hear this wide open network from 2 blocks away. So I can be in the car park of a grocery store, hacking into your network, and you won't even know it's happening. So distance should never be a security mechanism. Okay. So I firmly believe that we aren't paranoid enough. There are monsters out there that we need to be protected from. And literally turn WPA3 on now. That's the end of the session. Thank you very much for coming. I've just told you what the problem is, and I've told you the solution. Obviously, we're going to go a bit further, but we have the tools available to us today that can stop all the problems with security, and it's called WPA3. Okay. The problem is, oh, well, some of the clients in the university or the hospital don't support that. So now we go into transition mode and we turn on transition mode. And now we have all the old problems that we used to have. We just built this fantastic castle, but we've left the door unlocked at the back in case the baker wants to pop out and buy some bread. Well, the attackers are obviously going to come in through that undefended door, right? And so we need to be more paranoid, and we need to defend ourselves and our users from the bad people that are out there. So simple Wi-Fi foundations. You find the network. You look for beacons. You send out probes, or your device does, and you can use 802.11k and v to help you find better solutions. You join the network, you authenticate, and you associate. Then security kicks in. Now, we've had quite a long relationship with security. It started off okay, but then suddenly got very unusable in the fact that it didn't exist, and that was WEP. There's nothing wrong with WEP other than it was weak for its time. It was fine at the start, but as attacks progressed, weaknesses in WEP were more easily discovered. WPA was a short-term fix to WEP, while the standards bodies worked on a longer-term security. And then IEEE 802.11i came out in 2004, and the Wi-Fi Alliance immediately converted that over and used that as a foundation for WPA2. And WPA2 fixed the problems with WEP and the inherent problem with WPA. And I've got to mention here that WPA is not as bad as people think it is. I don't think anybody tried to break it because no one cared, because WPA2 came along and everybody stopped using WPA. But technically, WPA was better than WEP at the time, but it's of course not as good as WPA2. And as we'll see shortly, WPA3 is the solution we should be pushing now. And I've attended talks where people say we don't need to go to WPA3. I completely disagree. We should mandate that everybody uses WPA3 now. And what about devices that don't support WPA3? We'll upgrade them. Yes, I understand. If you work in a hospital, it may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade some kind of hospital machine. But maybe we should consider other methods. There's an old English saying that says you can't have your cake and eat it. And what they mean is you can't have your cake, eat it, and keep it. You have to make a decision. You can't grumble. The car's making a funny noise. Well, take it to be repaired then. Well, I don't want to spend the money. Well, put up with a funny noise then. We all understand that concept. When it comes to security, and it may not be us, it may be the executives in our company, they may be of an opinion that it's okay to use WPA3, but put transition mode on. So we still run in WPA2 with all its inherent weaknesses. And I'm old school. I like to just, no, stop. Tomorrow is the last day you can use WPA2 on our network. Let's upgrade next week. As of Monday, it's WPA3 only. Well, what about devices that can't support WPA3? You know, we might have some old G or A devices. Really? You're using devices that came out in early 2000? You don't think it might be a good idea to maybe upgrade them now? If you haven't upgraded them, you probably haven't upgraded the firmware in them either. And that's where we come into where reality meets theory. There's always a yes, but ... And we have to make a decision. Do we put up with the older devices or do we upgrade? And I always tell a story. Let's take, for example, Walmart. Phil doesn't like WPA2, so Walmart now has to go and upgrade all their barcode scanners. Is Walmart going to upgrade their barcode scanners in every single store they have in America because Phil doesn't like WPA3? And the reality is, maybe we put them on a separate network, let them run whatever they run, but give them access to limited areas. And so we don't have to upgrade everything to WPA3. We could, for example, create a warehouse SSID that's still backwards compatible or just runs WPA2. But, put a firewall in between that segment and the rest of the network. And so we do have to balance the reality of day-to-day operations with the theory. The easy solution is to upgrade to WPA3 now. But I am aware, before I get lots of hate mail, that everybody's got a situation where, well, we can't do that because... So let's try and think outside the box and work around it then. All right. So when you connect to the network, you authenticate, you associate, and then you are connected. And there's basically two ways to do this: with security or without security. Now, without security isn't necessarily a bad thing if you don't want security, because you're in a coffee shop or an airport or something. So that's fine. With security, there are two options: personal and enterprise. Please understand they really are what their name suggests. Enterprise is a higher level of security for enterprises, where personal is really a very basic, simple level of security. So our picture changes somewhat now, and we only have security if we choose enterprise or personal. If we choose without security, that really is without security. So we should do something to stop anybody connecting to us and doing illegal things. So if someone connects to your network because it's open and they attack the Pentagon, the IP address that the attack of the Pentagon will come from is your IP address, right? So that might not be a good idea. So you need to have some kind of web authentication, a captive portal or a hotspot or something. And again, captive portal is a whole other level of complexity that we can spend an hour on. So an open system, you authenticate, you associate, data is exchanged. Nice and simple. Personal uses the concept of a pre-shared key, well, WPA2 personal does. You take a passphrase, you mix it with the SSID 4,000 times, and out pops what's called the pre-shared key. And so what will happen is the client and the wireless infrastructure, the AP, the controller, whatever, they will compare the information as part of the connection, and they will see if you have the right pre-shared key. If the pre-shared keys don't match, they will immediately drop the connection. Pre-shared key or personal is sometimes known as PSK, pre-shared key. The wireless infrastructure and the client share a common password. It is typically entered manually on the configuration of the wireless infrastructure and typically entered on the client when you try and connect. Now, very important point, everyone who knows the passphrase can access the network and they can de-encrypt all your traffic. Please be aware of that. This is perfectly safe. However, you may change the password, maybe not every 30 days, but maybe every 6 months. You should change the password when someone leaves the company. Okay, thank you very much. I'm handing in my notice. I'm leaving now. Tomorrow I can sit outside in my car, capture data on your network, and I can decrypt all your traffic. Not such a good idea. You should use a serious level of length and/or complexity. Remember, length is better than complexity. But all of these are very inconvenient. Remember, inconvenience is a hacker's best friend. whenever I do a talk, I ask people how many of you use pre-shared key, and a lot of people put their hands up. Then I say, how many of you regret telling me that you use pre-shared key? And the same hands usually go up. Then I say, how many of you, haven't changed the password for several years? And no one puts their hands up. And I'm like, you've learned the lesson, right? Don't admit in public what you do. But I'm like, you know who you are, and you should be aware that that is probably not a good idea. So with WPA2 Personal, you authenticate and you associate, then the pre-shared key on both sides of the link, on the client side and on the AP side, is used to create a pairwise master key, a PMK. And via the four-way handshake, then the PMK is converted into a PTK. And then encrypted data is exchanged. If you use WPA2 Enterprise, you have the concept of the supplicant, the authenticator. The supplicant is the client, the authenticator is the wireless infrastructure, and the authentication server is the Radius server. It's very important to understand, most probably today, you connect your Radius server into like Microsoft Active Directory or some kind of LDAP. And typically what happens, when you use one of the EAP methods, is a certificate from the Radius server is downloaded to your client, and then you validate the client by using a trusted third party certificate authority to validate this really is a certificate belonging to NC Expert's Radius server or whatever. There is a cost involved, and it's very inconvenient because you've got to get the certificate created using your public key, and it costs money to do that. And then you have to configure the clients to have the key that they need. If you save money and you use a local certificate authority, not a PKI, public key infrastructure, you've now got to manually install that certificate on each client for when this certificate is downloaded during the connection. And it's very convenient to just let it say accept the certificate when it comes down, or to turn off validate certificate. And those are very dangerous things to do. WEP is probably safer now because a third-party attacker can just inject themselves as a man-in-the-middle attack. So in WPA2 Enterprise, you authenticate, you associate, you run the EAP process, and that results in a master session key being created at the client and the AP. And that master session key is used to create a PMK, which is then used to create, via the four-way handshake, a PTK. And then we use that to encrypt the data. Now, Enterprise is very, very secure when configured correctly. Okay? It requires the use of EAP and Radius. And by the way, it uses a standard TLS. It's not a special version of EAP TLS. It's standard TLS that's embedded inside the EAP process. You will need to use a certificate or a variant like Cisco EAP Fast. Devices will typically have to be onboarded unless you are using a public key infrastructure, which has other issues and limitations. All of this can be very, very inconvenient. We have to talk about the four-way handshake. Four-way handshake is very important. It takes the PMK, whether it was gotten from the pre-shared key or whether it was gotten from the master session key with EAP, and it converts that into an individual key for every client every time they connect. So the idea of the four-way handshake is to take the PMK, which is always unique if you use 802.1x EAP Radius Enterprise, but is always the same if you use pre-shared key. It's very important you understand that. The password and the SSID always result in the same PSK, which always results in the PMK, the same PMK. So the idea is to take the PMK and convert it into an individual station key. And so it uses random numbers and MAC addresses. The authentic supplicant and authenticator, random number and address MAC addresses. It takes those four things and the PMK, mixes them together in a known algorithm, and out pops your pairwise transient key. Two of the keys are used to protect data in the four-way handshake, the KEK and the KCK, and the TK, also known as the TEK, the temporal key, or the transient key, depending on whose article you read, or the temporal encryption key, sometimes known as the TEK, the TEK. Basically, that's the guy that will be used to encrypt all data. Now, group keys are downloaded in exchange number 3 of the four-way handshake, and they are protected with the key encryption key. And then you have a MIC value, a little fancy frame check sequence that is used to protect exchange 2, 3, and 4. And that uses the key, the KCK, the key check key. Cool. So that's the four-way handshake. Very important part of security in Wi-Fi. Now, it's very important to understand if you're using WPA2 Personal, everyone, every time they connect, has the same PSK and the same PMK. If I break your passphrase, I'm the king of your network. In the past, now, and forever. Captures I took a year ago, captures I take in a year's time. If you don't change the passphrase, I will be able to decrypt. And short passphrases are very easy to crack. It's very important you understand if you use WPA2 Enterprise, everyone, every time they connect, has a unique MSK, therefore they always get a unique PMK. So WPA2 Enterprise is much more secure than WPA2 Personal. Couple of problems with WPA2 Personal. It's old. Okay, we have deauthentication attacks. If I say everybody disconnect, if I pretend to be your AP and say everybody disconnect, all the clients go, okay, they disconnect. You can attack the four-way handshake and you can try and guess the passphrase. I can capture your data and then go and attack it offline. It happily lets you not use security. So WPA2 lets you use no security. No security equals no encryption. And there are known attacks that used vulnerability, leverage vulnerabilities of WPA2 to attack networks. One thing to be aware of as well now is Microsoft and the industry are moving away from PEEP-based WPA2 enterprise. Okay, and I know that might be horrible for a lot of you to hear, but so be it. They are recommending other things, EAP-TLS, EAP-TTLS, and so on. But Microsoft is now discouraging the use of PEEP, MS-CHAP v2, because it uses the NTLM hash method, which is a unsafe method to be used. Even though it still operates inside the TLS tunnel, the endpoint is such that the protocol itself is not very safe to store information on your servers. So how do you fix the problem in WPA2? I'll give you the short version. It's very simple. Use strong or long passwords with WPA2 Personal. With WPA2 Enterprise, the only thing you can do is turn on protected management frames. We'll talk about in a little while, as long as the clients support it. The other problems we have in WPA2 Enterprise is what version of TLS are you using? 1.2 is the bare minimum recommendation. We encourage that you go to 1.3 as soon as possible. Another problem with WPA2 Enterprise is if you man in the middle attack them and present them with a new certificate, all the user has to do is to say yes or okay when presented with a new invalid certificate. And that is not cool. You can stop this in group policy, MDM control, or you can mandate certificate validation. But a lot of customers do not do this. They do not enforce these extra security mechanisms because they're quite inconvenient, right? WPA3 is our hero. First of all, in the WPA3 Personal, it disconnects the pre-shared key from being directly converted into the PMK. It uses an elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman exchange inside the SAE for authentication exchange, and out pops a PMK. You then do a standard association, and then the four-way handshake converts the PMK over to the PTK. And this is very important to understand. Now everyone, every time they connect, get a unique PMK, even if it's WPA3 personal. And that in itself makes WPA3 worth the effort. So it enhances security. It disallows older legacy protocols like TKIP, and it requires that you turn on protected management frames. Protected management frames, when I say to you, disconnect, deauthenticate, you're like, well, actually, you said you came from my AP address, MAC address, but you didn't use a secret password. So I don't believe it's really you, so I'm going to ignore it. So protected management frames, you do have a transition mode in 2.4 and 5 gigahertz where you can allow it to not be turned on, or say it's capable, but it's not mandated or not required, but it is mandated and required to be on in 6 gigahertz. It also gives us a new friend, OWE. It also gives us higher level 192-bit security for sensitive environments. So, summary of WPA3, it's perfect, use it. The PMK is no longer based directly from the pre-shared key. It's super duper mega awesome, and it comes with a new friend called OWE. So OWE isn't technically a part of WPA3, but it kind of comes with WPA3. And what OWE gives you is a special association mechanism when you have an open network. You have an open network, and when you associate, it does an elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman exchange that gives you a PMK. So on your open network, you now get encryption whether you want it or not, as long as the clients support it. And that gives you a PTK, and you can then use that to encrypt data. So now we have a new option. We have with security, we have without security, and we also have kind of without security, but with some. So it's an open network. There's no authentication. But OWE encrypts your data. So if you're at the Starbucks or at the airport using WPA3 on a pre-shared key, it's very equivalent to if you're at the airport or the Starbucks using OWE with no pre-shared key. You get encryption. It's very important to understand that WPA3 SAE and OWE do not do authentication. So you will still need a pre-shared key or a passphrase. I should say passphrase because it's not pre-shared key anymore. You should still need a passphrase to be used as authentication with WPA3 personal. But of course, OWE is wide open. There's no authentication, no security, but you do get encrypted data. And if you are doing an open network in 6 gigahertz, it's mandated that it has to be OWE. So you will get encryption. And so there's a summary of our security levels. And of course, we're safe now, right? So the bad guys, the hackers, they can break these. Well, they can kind of break these as well, right? If you don't configure them correctly. WPA2 Enterprise, if configured incorrectly, you're not actually breaking these. You're breaking the user connection and getting leveraged into the protocol. WPA3 Personal, WPA3 Enterprise. If you turn on transition mode, you've basically just handed Superman kryptonite. You've taken away all his magic powers, all his superpowers. Okay? So as long as you implement these correctly, you are secure. What does Wi-Fi 7 do? What does Wi-Fi 7 change? Well, took the liberty of creating a little listing of all the different options that we have. And I also took the liberty of contacting a good friend of mine, Stephen Orr. We all know him from WLPC and the Wi-Fi Alliance and things. And I said, Stephen, you did some really great slides recently. could I borrow some? And he happily let me use them. And that was very kind of him. So first of all, WPA3 brings out new functions. Wi-Fi 7 brings out new suite types for authentication and encryption. And again, full credit to Stephen. These are his slides. And here's the latest WPA3. It's now on version 3.5. It was 3.4 like a month ago. 3.5 has come out for WPA3. And how do you take all these different acronyms, mix them all? And again, this is Stephen's slide. So is this. And this really gives you an overview of what's going on. And then Stephen gave us this slide, which I really wanted to reuse and show people. Because whether you run WPA3 Personal, WPA3 Enterprise only, WPA3 Personal Transition, WPA3 Personal without any transition, WPA3 Enterprise Transition, or WPA3 Enterprise 192-bit, there's not really a button where you say, turn on transition mode. There may be on some vendors, but typically it is a configuration of different authentication and key management, and then choosing an attribute of PMF. So if you do WPA3 Personal, PMF is required. But if you want to have WPA3 Personal Transition mode, you can say PMF is optional. So just by selecting what you do, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you run WPA2 Enterprise with PMF, a lot of devices identify that as WPA3 Enterprise. WPA3 Enterprise is similar, if not the same, as WPA2 Enterprise with PMF turned on. And so it's how you use all these options that defines whether you're doing transition mode or whether you're doing non-transition mode or enhanced 192-bit security mode. I just wanted to show you all a 802.11w PMF, also known as MFP, remember? And you have MFP required, management frame protection required, and you have management frame protection capable. Now, because both of these are true, you have to have PMF on this network. Okay, so this is not. And so transition mode can be used for WPA3 to allow WPA2 protocols. It can also be used with PMF. If you have WPA3 transition mode turned on, you may allow some older WPA2 AKMs. If you have 802.11w PMF transition mode on, that means management frame protection capable is true, but management frame protection required is false. So you're not requiring MFP to be turned on. So clients that don't support PMF will be allowed to connect. If you put both of these as true, all clients must support PMF. And I'm also showing down here that you now get a new Cypher suite called BIP that comes with this as well. And so encrypted management frames, disassociations, deauthentications, robust management frames, and robust action frames. And Phil, do you have a list of these? Actually, we do. It's all listed in the 802.11 2020 table 951. Which frames are defined as being robust? And there's another bit of the table. These aren't so commonly used, but I wanted to include the full table. And of course, in Wi-Fi 7, then we have beacon protection. So beacon protection is a bit in the extended capabilities element, octet number 11. And if beacon protection is enabled, that means beacons will now have their own management MIC element. So you can tell if beacons are really coming from your AP or if someone is trying to spoof your AP. And so there's some key points. If you pardon the pun, I apologize for that terrible pun. The pairwise transient key is created during the exchange of the four-way handshake. The pairwise transient key is created as a function of the four-way handshake. And PTK stands for pairwise transient or temporal key, depending on whose book you read. The GTK is transmitted during exchange 3 of the four-way handshake. That's the group transient temporal key. The BIP, the Broadcast Multicast Integrity Protocol, IGDK, is transmitted during exchange 3 of the four-way handshake. The integrity group transient temporal key. And the big TK, or the BIGTK, is transmitted again during exchange 3 of the four-way handshake. If you recall back when I talked about the four-way handshake, I did actually say group keys because there are 3 of them that can be exchanged. So the beacon integrity group transient or temporal key. Now, unicast data is protected by the pairwise transient key, PTK, after security association, of course. Broadcast and multicast data to and from a client is protected by the group temporal key, the GTK, after security association. If you are using beacon protection, broadcast frame protection of beacon frames gives you data integrity and replay protection using the BIP, BIGTK. I just can't help myself calling this big TK. PMF, unicast management frames are protected with the standard PTK. Broadcast management frames, not beacons, non-beacons, they are protected using the BIP IGTK. So the BIGTK is only used for broadcast frame protection. Now, for those who are interested in, well, what about Wi-Fi 7 MLO? I can hear you shouting. So the PMK Security Association and the PTK Security Association. When you get a PMK, you're set to have a PMK SA. After the four-way handshake, when you've got a PTK, you are said to have a PTK SA, Pairwise Transient Key Security Association. Both of these, for individually addressed frames, are established at the MLD level of Wi-Fi 7, the upper MAC address. Group keys, the GTK, the IGTK, or the BIGTK, they are established at the link level for each link. Be aware of that. So MLD and MLO is really shaking up the security mechanisms on our clients and our APs. So Section 4, top tips. Use WPA3 as soon as possible. Disable older protocols. Be very wary of transition mode. I'm not a fan of MAC address filtering and SSID hiding. WPA3 Enterprise is essentially WPA2 Enterprise with PMF enabled. It's mandatory for 6 GHz operation, WPA3, and mandatory for Wi-Fi 7. PMF, it means your management frames are authenticated. Unicast management frames, robust action frames are encrypted. It needs client support, of course. Mandated in 6 GHz, WPA3, and with Wi-Fi 7. Again, use transition mode with care. Transition mode is not your friend. Transition mode is all those new secure things you've turned on with the new protocol. Let's not make them mandatory and turn them off. That's exactly what transition mode is. If you can't do it, we won't use them. So what's a hacker going to do? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Let's turn it off then. Okay. Isolation. Use network segmentation. Use firewalls. Use a VPN when you're outside the office. Practice good cyber health. Use strong passwords. Longer is better than complex. Update firmware to the latest versions. Clear out your known network list and your Wi-Fi on your devices frequently. At the end of the session today, open up your phone and your laptop. Take a look at your known network list. If you still have the hotel in Phoenix and you attended Phoenix, or last year, if you attended Prague, WLPC, hang your head in shame, right? And I know that some of you on the call are going, no, Phil, we used open roaming. Ta-da! Exactly. Open roaming, if it's supported, is a great guest option because it automatically uses EAP, the TLS, to encrypt your data. And you don't need to delete that one because that's one that's reusable. But if you have like that, that Hilton hotel or that Marriott hotel that you were on vacation with or on customer site with a couple of weeks ago. But Phil, it's so inconvenient to have to automatically connect. Yes, it is inconvenient. Inconvenience is a hacker's best friend. Disable remote management of devices. So, Phil, I've turned on remote management because it's really convenient that when I'm away, I can manage the network for the family. Well, you know that hackers can remotely manage. If they somehow get in past your 8-digit 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 password, they can now connect in and access your configuration, right? On your router, for example, maybe you should make it so you cannot configure it from a Wi-Fi link. Have a VPN back into your office and manage it that way, maybe. Do you really, really need it? What's more inconvenient? Having to get one of the kids to go upstairs and type something in so you can remotely manage it and then get them to type something in so you can turn it off. That's a bit inconvenient, Phil. It's an awful lot more inconvenient than someone stealing your bank account details, your credit card information, your Bitcoin, and everything else, all right? Think about the inconvenient pain points. Is it really necessary that you should be allowed to remotely connect in and configure your network? And sometimes the answer is no, you don't need to do it. That's a decision that we have to make as individuals. The NSA did a great story here from Forbes. The NSA put a recommendation that stop leaving open connection information about Wi-Fi networks in your network list. Let's say that you're at a coffee shop. If I set up a well-known hotel name, hotel as an SSID, and you've stayed at that hotel and you've connected to it previously, what will happen is your computer will try its best to help you and it will automatically connect to the hotel network. You think you're connected to something else and you'll happily start using data and so on and so forth. And what will happen is I will be able to see all your data and decrypt it. But hopefully you're also using a VPN or something, right? Using HTTPS and things. I wrote a blog a long time ago. I think it was one of the first blogs I wrote for NC Expert, and it was only with an S. Only use protocols with an S in them. HTTPS, SFTP, SSH. Like don't connect via Telnet from the coffee shop to your home router or your office router. Just don't do it. And I said the ultimate security, of course, is to use VPNs. I added an S on the end because now it's with an S. So really, really use the protocols with S in them. DNS, use some kind of filtering like Cisco Umbrella or Cloudflare or something. Use some kind of DNS filter. When a malware arrives on your computer, the first thing it does, it reaches out to a DNS server to resolve nastyvirus.ru or something. And if your DNS filtering says no, it'll deny it and also log it, so you know that something in your system tried to reach it. You can then go and find it and eradicate it. Use a WIPS, a WIPS. Use one. Know your environment. Know what's normal. Know what's abnormal. You can simply run a WIPS today. They come with the systems. You can install like a Raspberry Pi running a WIPS. Be aware of the throughput speed. If you got 2 gigabits at home and your WIPS is capable of doing 1 gigabit, then you've just slowed down your entire network at home. You can't use the full 2 gigabits if you're only using 1 gigabit on the WIPS system. So key takeaways: use WPA3. Do not use transition mode. Have a different SSID for each frequency. 6 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz may be the exception to this rule. Use a different SSID for WPA2 and WPA3 clients. Don't use the same PSK on your WPA2 and WPA3 SSIDs. If you're smart enough to say, well, we got some older WPA2 clients, let's create their own SSID. Don't use the same pre-shared key, please. If you're serious about security, consider TLS-based option and move to TLS 1.3 as soon as possible. But Phil, These are so inconvenient. Summary. We must make sure our Wi-Fi is secure. WPA3 is the future and it's coming. Okay? Future looks bright. Be a little bit more paranoid. Let's work together and make the world a safer place. Where can you learn more? Just mention some offerings we have here. You can come on CWNP, CWSP, CompTIA, EC Council, Cisco Cyber Certs. You've also got ISC Squared. We have our own hacking and pen testing classes where we teach you the fundamentals of hacking and how to defend against them. We have an intro and an advanced class. We have a CCNA class coming up, a CWNA and a CWSP class coming up, and a CWDP class coming up. And here's some dates to look out for. And NC Expert, now we do ubiquity training as well. Last thing to mention, we also do a consultancy service. If you've got a problem, call on us. We'll help you resolve it. And that's it. We're done. The next webinar, it was supposed to be this one, but we had to swap them around. It's going to be on certificates. Help, please. It'll be in about a month or so in April. And I'm going to stop the recording there.